Mouth wide open like they yawning. Every time they see me, they in G-Shock. Homie, this is too far. Homie, I feel too alive. You can see me like Illuminati. You can see me like Illuminati. But I'm shining so bright, don't come in.
I know, look at that. You're probably thinking, oh my god, this is gonna taste like mayonnaise. That's just ruined the potatoes. But no, seriously, it's gonna taste fantastic. I'm gonna make some toad in the hole with some mashed potatoes, the best mash ever in my opinion, and some broccoli, which I'm gonna parboil and then fry it a bit with some garlic. Toad in the hole is a classic British dish. It's Yorkshire pudding batter with sausages in. If you don't know what a Yorkshire pudding is, it's like a popover, if you know what that is. Not quite the same. I'm gonna get the mash started by covering these potatoes, more or less. I'm just gonna use baby potatoes. I quite like the mashed potato from baby potatoes, and I'm gonna leave the skins on. You can peel your potatoes, you can use different potatoes, whatever you'd like to do. I'm gonna kind of pretty heavily salt this. That's the wrong herb. And we'll get our sausages going as well. So for this, I'm gonna use corn sausages, vegetarian sausages. I really like corn sausages because they have quite a meaty texture. Quite well seasoned. They don't have like the bready texture that some vegetarian sausages have. Get some olive oil in here. Now, with these corn sausages, you can do them a little bit ahead of everything else, because they're quite happy to sit there in the pan for a bit. With meat though, I don't really know much about cooking meat, but having them sitting there at a lower temperature probably isn't a good idea. So for the Yorkshire pudding batter, I'm actually going to use the recipe from BBC Good Food, but make it a little thinner than what BBC Good Food recommends. It's going to be 140 grams of plain flour. I was lucky. And 4 eggs. Oh yeah, and we don't keep our eggs in the fridge here. They actually are bought in the store, off the shelf, non-refrigerated. And then it's 200 milliliters of milk. Like I said, a little thinner than the BBC Good Food recipe. Hi. Give that a mix. We get some salt in here too. And a bit of black pepper. When you're whisking this, make sure you get to the bottom, scrape off the bottom, scrape down the edges, make sure there's no dry flour sat there. I want it a little thinner than that. So just so you can see the consistency, it's like that. Okay, This is a bit too hot, so let's get these sausages in. I'll just turn that down a bit because it was getting way too hot. If you're heating up oil in a pan, always keep an eye on it because you can start an oil fire if it gets too hot. And if an oil fire does start, do not put water on it. If you put water on an oil fire, it'll blow up everywhere and it'll cause a huge mess and possibly cause an even bigger fire. So just be careful of this. If you don't know how to deal with an oil fire, you should Google it right now and look up the different methods you can use to deal with an oil fire. So once these are a bit closer to being done, I'm going to put some rosemary in here. If things are cooking a bit too quickly for you, it's getting a bit too brown too fast and it still needs to cook through, I like to just take it off the heat for a little bit, let the hob cool down, and for everyone shouting at me for using something metal in a non-stick pan, I'm trying my very best not to touch the pan. So we can let this batter just sit for now. And by the way, I know it's tempting to use flaky salt, like this kind of salt in things like this, but you want to use flaky salt for finishing. So that means at the end when you're putting some salt on some vegetables or something like that after they're cooked, you can use this flaky salt. In my experience, the regular old table salt is great for like salting in things like this. You could use, a kosher salt or something like that. But this is quite strong actually, it adds quite a salty flavor. So, and this flaky salt tends to be quite mild, it's got like a more mellow flavor. So it's really a waste to put it in something like this. Just use, regular old table salt. Okay, the sausages have calmed down a little bit and the potatoes are starting to boil. And you want to do the potatoes until they're fork tender. So what that means is you poke a fork in, and if you lift the potato open, it just slides off the fork, then they're done. Obviously those are not done, so we'll wait for now. So these corn sausages can brown pretty easily and not be cooked fully through. So you want to kind of avoid them getting too dry and hard on the outside. So once you've kind of got, the look that you want on them, it really doesn't affect the flavor that much. You can kind of turn them right down and just let them kind of heat through. They're going to go in the oven with the toad in the hole anyway, so and you just want to, once your potatoes are boiling, you want to keep an eye on them because it can boil over if you don't keep an eye on it. So I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Don't let this get a skin on it, just give it a stir every now and again. But you can make this, ahead of, waiting for this stuff to be done. And just set it to one side, and then I think what we'll do is we'll get the broccoli sorted. It's not looking its best. It's kind of yellowing. It's what you want to avoid on broccoli, but this is fine. I'll give this a wash. So I am not a professional cook, I'm just a home cook. I do this as a hobby, and I'm kind of terrible at processing broccoli, so let's see how we get on. That one's got a bit of, I think I'll just cut that away. You can take as much or as little of the stem as you like, This part is, a lot of people fry this and cook this. I don't. Especially not for this, but some people do. I'm not sure how far down you get before it gets too woody. But you can Google it and see which parts are the best to cook. I'm just gonna cut some of this down to to a slightly smaller size. I'm sure there's some professionals out there right now cringing at the way I'm preparing my broccoli with. That's okay. You can do what you like. By the way, these are awesome. They're called a bench scraper. I know you can use them for like cutting through things. If you Google a bench scraper, you can find these online to buy. And they're great for picking stuff up. So then put in a pan or whatever, or cleaning up a mess like this. Give these a bit of a poke, see if they're cooked through. They feel pretty cooked through. That one, maybe a little bit. I think another minute or two, that'll be done. So, since there's only a minute or two left on these, I'm just gonna put a bit of rosemary, just dried rosemary. I'm not doing anything fancy. This is honestly, it's a bit of a lazy dish. A lot of people think toad in the hole and mashed potato and things like that takes a lot of effort, but really it's a lot of waiting, right? Boil the potatoes, cook the sausages, and do your batter, and that's basically it. So I'm gonna get that rosemary distributed a bit. And I'll give those another minute or two. Just check on these potatoes. Yeah, they're getting there. So it seems this has stopped simmering. Just gonna turn it back up a bit. And let's do some garlic for the broccoli. So I'm just gonna crush and peel this, and then finely slice it, finely chop. You know, when you get these green bits and garlic, I hear it can affect the flavor, and you know, some people remove it. I don't. If it's not too bad, I don't. But you can do what you like. That's fine. I think it's time those sausages came off. I think I'll just leave them on the hob and turn the hob off, and that extra heat can cook them through a little more. So when you want to peel garlic, I always cut off both ends. You don't really have to cut off the tip, but I always cut off both ends. Give it a tap. That loosens up the skin, and the skin comes right off. You don't have to fully crush it or anything. Just give it a little tap, and then you can do your crushing afterwards. There we go. Like, if you fully crush it like I just did, you end up with pieces, perhaps, and it makes getting the skin off sometimes even harder. So that's a good simmer for the potatoes now. It shouldn't boil over. Sometimes it takes a couple of adjustments to get it at the right spot. I'm just gonna finely chop this. So this batter can be used to make Yorkshire puddings, or in my case, toad in the hole. A Yorkshire pudding, if you're in the US, you can make it in a muffin tray. And what you do is you get your muffin tray, you put some oil, so some olive oil or sunflower oil, or even lard if you want to, in each of the containers, the muffin holes, whatever you want to call them. And then you put it in the oven to preheat. And then once it's heated up, you take it out, you pour the batter into each one, and then you put it back in the oven until it rises. It's the same with this. Basically, you put some oil in here, you preheat it in the oven, and then once it's heated up, You put your sausages in, you pour your batter over, you put it back in the oven until it's risen. So the only tip I'd give you is you do not want to open the oven while your Yorkshire pudding or toad in the hole is rising, because it will collapse. Speaking of which, I should preheat the oven. So in my oven I'm going for fan 200. If you can get it a little hotter, it's probably worth it, maybe 210. This is Celsius, not Fahrenheit. These sausages are getting pretty brown, so I'm just going to take them off the hob for now. And let's check on the potatoes. Yeah, they're getting there. You really want your potatoes to be covered by the water. You can see some has boiled away. You need to account for that. I didn't. Oh well. Alright, so my oven is preheated. My potatoes are almost done. Very close. You don't want to overcook them, otherwise your mash will end up being kind of a weird texture, kind of thin. And I'd say they're pretty much done actually, falling off the fork. So you can see I can get my fork in. They should really just fall off. But these are going to sit for a minute. So I'm going to take them out now, turn off the heat. I've got a colander, I'm just going to empty these out. I don't want them to keep cooking. Just be careful, this is very hot. Steam is terrible for burning. I'm going to put them back in the pan. I'm not going to put them back on the hot hob, I'm going to leave them on a cool hob. I'm just going to put a lid on these for now. Okay, so now the potatoes are done, we're going to start getting our broccoli water boiling. And while that comes up to a boil, we're going to get the tray for the toad in the hole ready. All I've done is put some olive oil in here. I'd probably recommend a higher smoke point oil, like sunflower oil or something like that. You can use olive oil though. It does work, and all you need to do is get this preheated in the oven. So we're going to do that while we wait for the water to boil. Alright, so that pan's going to be preheated now. So I'm just going to move this garlic. This is our pan with the preheated oil. And we're going to put our sausages in and then the batter. You can kind of lay these out how you like. Doesn't really matter too much, but you want to make sure you leave some room at the edges for the Yorkshire pudding batter to rise. So you can see here this is a bit uneven and the oil is kind of pooled this way, so I'm going to start here so we push the oil back that direction with the batter hopefully. Okay, now back in the oven with this. Okay, now that that's in the oven, do not open it until it's done. You have to wait. Don't open it to check it. You have to wait until it's done. I'll show you what that looks like when we get there. Next thing we're going to do is get our broccoli parboiled. So we're just waiting for this to finish coming up to a boil. These are so good. Our water's boiling. Alright, hopefully this fits. I've used a pretty small pan. Yeah, we're good. Okay, now that the broccoli's in, we're going to let it parboil for 2 or 3 minutes. So when we fry the broccoli, I'm just going to use the same pan as the sausages. I'm just wiping it out with a bit of kitchen paper. Put that back on, start getting it back up to temperature, and let's get the broccoli out. I'm just going to let that sit there for now. Bit of olive oil. So the toad in the hole is starting to rise, looking good. So let's go get our broccoli done. And let's get our garlic going. Now you want to be really careful with the garlic, you don't want to burn it. It goes really bitter and it ruins the flavour of everything. It's going to go pretty fast because we've chopped it so finely, so we're going to go now with the broccoli. I'm going to add a little bit of MSG to this. MSG and broccoli go together great, in my opinion. You don't have to use it. No matter how you feel about MSG, you're cooking for yourself, so you do what you like. No judgment from me. And a little bit of salt. And I think we can turn the heat off on that. We don't want to burn the garlic. Needs a bit more salt. Okay. I think we can take that off. Now let's do our mashed potato. So the secret to amazing mashed potato, it's not butter, it's not milk or cream, forget the cream. It's two things. It's salt and mayonnaise. I swear to God, and it will not taste like mayonnaise once you've done it. I mean, if you add too much, it will, of course, but mayonnaise gives it this really rich, creamy taste. I never said this was healthy, but it's fantastic in mashed potato. I'm gonna add a little bit of milk for texture, just to start us off. We might have to add some more if the texture isn't right. I'm gonna add a fair amount of salt. Potatoes can take a lot of salt. And we'll taste it and see if it needs more. And then we're gonna add a lot of mayonnaise too. I know, look at that. You're probably thinking, oh my God, this is gonna taste like mayonnaise. That's just ruined the potatoes. But no, seriously, it's gonna taste fantastic. And of course, I'm gonna put some butter in there because you can't not. Like I said before, we like it with the skins in. But you don't have to do it with the skins in. And don't over mash your potatoes because they'll get all gloopy and they'll have a terrible texture. Let's give this a try. Not bad. Take a little more milk. And more salt, believe it or not. I'm also going to put in a little bit of white pepper. You know, I'm not trying to make Michelin-starred potatoes with the equivalent amount of butter in them. But I'm also not trying to make healthy mashed potatoes either. Alright, let's give these another try. Getting there. More salt. More mayonnaise. Now, keep adding. Once you put the initial amount in, keep adding it bit by bit until it tastes really good. And then don't put in any more, because then it will start tasting like mayonnaise. At this point, I'm going to stop mashing. I'm just going to mix it in. Let's give that another try. Really good. Alright, so our toad in the hole is looking pretty done. I think a taller baking tray probably would have been better to give it kind of that classic shape. But this is fine. We're going to give it another couple of minutes just to stiffen up, and then we'll take it out. This isn't lumpy, it's nice and smooth. We've got the exact kind of texture that we want. So good. Now, I like adding chives to mash. I don't have any fresh chives, I'm just going to use dried ones, which are fine. Like I said, this is a lazy toad in the hole. The reason why I don't add the chives too early is because when you're mashing, you can end up turning the mash kind of a greyish colour, because some of that green leaches out into the mash. So we're just gonna stir them in at the end and kind of let them sit there and let the flavour come out a bit. Right, this looks ready. Now, nice and soft, but crispy edges. Perfect. I'm gonna get the kettle going for some gravy. So when I'm making my gravy, I like to use these Bisto gravy granules. These ones are fine. The vegetable one and the onion one is good too. Sometimes you can even mix half and half. I also like to put in an oxo cube, give it a bit of extra kick. And I do like my gravy quite thick. So I'm gonna add quite a bit. Keep in mind you can always add, but you can't take away. And get this filled up. I think a bit of rosemary might be nice too. Get this well mixed. Some people like really thick gravy. And this isn't like US gravy like what you get with biscuits and gravy. It's like a savory sauce. It's usually made from like the meat juices from a roast, and then maybe thickened up with some corn flour or something like that. That's pretty good. Alright, let's get this plated up. I like to kind of get under it a bit with a silicone spatula to try and release it. Stuck a bit to the pan. That's okay. toad in the hole with mashed potato, the best mashed potato in my opinion, and some fried broccoli. That's so good.